Hi, welcome to another episode of the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm Steve Richardson, a bankruptcy attorney trying to keep people on their path to financial stability and independence through education. Many people dream of starting their own business and being their own boss. It's something that they built and can be their legacy. But most businesses fail at some point. It's only a matter of time. To increase your chances of success, you need the right money mindset, not only for your business, but yourself as well. That's why in this episode of the podcast, I talk with Justin Buonomo of Journey to Financial Freedom about how to form those mindsets and be successful. My guest today is Justin Buonomo, the CEO and founder of Journey to Financial Freedom, dedicated to empowering business owners to achieve their dream lifestyle through financial mastery. With a passion for helping business owners live their dream lives fueled and funded by their dream business, Justin believes in the transformative power of taking control of your financial destiny. Driven by this conviction, Justin and his team provide financial coaching and consulting services, equipping business owners with proven systems and strategies to optimize personal and business finances, scale their businesses correctly, and attain true autonomy and freedom. Through intention, strategy, and hard work, Justin helps business owners unlock new levels of success in both their personal and professional lives. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you, my friend, for having me. I'm really excited. I know we talked a little bit before we hit the record button about some questions we're going to get into, and I'm pumped to be here and provide some value for your audience.
Yeah. So I hope that there are lots of listeners out there that I know a lot of people want to be their own boss, want to start their own business. And as I said to you before we started recording, that's a challenge. Starting a business is fraught with a lot of challenges and roadblocks, and most businesses fail. But we're going to talk today about how to do that right. And I guess before you really even start a business, you need to get your personal financial house in order. And then once you have control of that, move on to looking into starting a business. So I know from talking to a lot of other people and other guests on my show that achieving financial freedom is often about having a good money mindset. What mindset changes do you believe are necessary for some to take control of their finances?
Love this question. I love that we're starting here because at JFF, the company that I own, we teach finances in two buckets, right? The
Okay.
strategic bucket, which is like the systems, the strategies, right? The P&Ls, like just getting all of the black and white together, right? But
Uh-huh.
the other bucket is the internal world. Because we always say your external wealth is just a reflection of your internal wealth. And I love to bluntly say a lot of times the money that you have in your bank account is usually a direct reflection of what's going on inside of you. And so a big thing that I've realized over the years is that our reality is a direct reflection or result of our behaviors, which come from our beliefs, and our beliefs were formed through our traumas and our experiences in life. And so, one of the best things I ever did was ask myself, why am I the way I am, and why do I do the things I do, particularly when it comes to money, right? And so, most people, right, they have these negative paradigms, whether they realize it or not, around money. Right. And so our company slogan is mutual freedom is the goal. And we always say, here's the mindset shift I want you to understand. It is impossible to live your dream life if you don't have your money under control, because I don't think a single person listening to this would say that their dream life consists of unnecessary stress and anxiety and missed opportunities when it comes to money. Right. And when you don't have your money under control, you're going to go through a whole bunch of unnecessary stress and anxieties and missed opportunities when it comes to money. And so, one thing that I've really realized and that's been really helpful with my money mindset shift is money is neutral, right? It's not negative. It's not by nature. It's not negative and it's not positive, right? Whether it's negative or positive, right, is assigned by the human being behind it, right? The human being utilizing it. And I always say, how can money be evil? It's a piece of paper or a piece of plastic, right? It's where money goes bad is when the human being behind it decides to misuse or abuse it. And before I go down too many rabbit holes here, I'm just going to give you this one analogy, right? This visual depiction. Imagine money as a hammer, right? It's a tool. Money is a tool. It's a beautiful tool, right? And imagine it as a hammer, right? A hammer can be used to build a village or tear down a village, right? The use and outcome of that hammer or that tool, right, is dictated by the human being utilizing it. And so, last thing I'll say here, and then we can get into maybe some deeper questions around the mindset. I'm just kind of shifting people's mindset around the use of money. I always say it's a beautiful tool, but a terrible God, right? But at the same time, it's tool freedom is the goal. And so my father-in-law, he's a contractor, love the man, great contractor. Actually, you can't see it, but my whole house is tore up right now, and he's off today, so I could shoot this podcast. And so great contractor, great at making money, not the best at keeping it. And so he was asking me about money, about budgeting, right? And so I basically gave him this analogy that said, money is the tool that you need to learn how to take control of if you want 95% of your stresses and anxieties to go away in life. And he said, how so? And I said, Frank, would you say it's your goal to get best outcomes with the master bathroom that you're renovating right now? Because at the time he was renovating the master bathroom. And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to kill it. It's going to look amazing. I said, great, cool. Let's hang out there for a second, right? That's your goal, right? Would you come over here and expect to accomplish that goal in the fastest, cheapest, most stress-free, and best way possible without your tools? Right? Would you come over here and think that you're going to get best results with that master bathroom without your hammer, your saw, your screwdriver, and whatever other tools that contractors use? And he said, no, absolutely not. I said, exactly. Same thing when it comes to your goal of living your best life possible without learning how to leverage, utilize, manage, and grow this beautiful tool called money. And you just saw the light bulbs go off, which was just so cool. And I hope the audience feels the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were started out the discussion with talking about recommended mindset changes. In your analogy with money as a tool, just like a hammer, and it could be used for good or for bad, and it can be used and misused. What better uses of that hammer, I guess, uh, should people think about in making these mindset changes and thinking about money in a more productive way and a better use?
Yeah. I would say the majority of stresses and anxieties that people go through in life are unnecessary or avoidable, right? And the majority of those stresses and anxieties somehow, some way are linked to money, right? And money doesn't create happiness, but it does solve a lot of the issues that cause unhappiness, right? And so when you learn how to manage your money better, a majority of your stresses and anxieties go away, right? And opportunities start to open up like no other for you, your family, or whether you have a business now or later. And so the mindset shift really is when you learn how to utilize money better, right? You will stress less, you'll have less anxiety, and you'll have more opportunities. And it gives you and your family the best opportunity at life, right? And I always say there's only two options when it comes to your money. It's either the stress of addressing or the stress of avoiding. You might as well pick the one that's got a return on investment, right? And
Right.
so it's usually where I like to start when it comes to a mindset shift. It's like we choose our hard, right? Like, yeah, stepping up and taking control of your finances is hard at first because it's scary, right? There's a lot of unknowns, right? We maybe have some guilt and shame around it due to the mistakes we've made or the lack of progress we've made. But what's our other option? Right? To keep settling for unnecessary stress and anxiety and missed opportunities. And
Mhm.
so, and most times, like I like to say with finances, here's a mindset shift as well. Fear is miles wide, but only an inch deep once you address it.
Mhm.
Right. And so when it comes to the fear you have on money, it's usually not that scary and not that big. And you realize that only when you start to address it. And so the last thing I'll leave you with is, or not leave you with, we're going to continue the show, but just to continue on this mindset side of things is I love the quote that says, your finances and your life in totality will expand into direct proportion to the hard conversations you're willing to have with yourself, other people, and God. Right. And what you resist persist. And so I hope that there's just a couple of analogies and quotes and pieces of motivation in there just to show people that like you really only have two options when it comes to your finances, the stress of addressing or the stress of avoiding. You might as well pick the one that's got a return on investment, right?
Right. And you talk about that fear, miles wide and inch deep, and addressing that fear. I was talking to a guest recently. We were talking about that scarcity mindset, that worry that there won't be enough money to pay the bills. and you fear that something will happen or whatever that is, but addressing that fear and coming up with strategies and plans and ways to make sure that there'll be enough money, putting aside an emergency fund, maybe arranging for some passive income to supplement your regular job, where you address that fear that there won't be enough money by ensuring that there will be and creating strategies for that, right?
Yeah, agreed, agreed. I love the quote that you get what you focus on.
Yeah,
So if you keep focusing on the lack, then you're always going to have lack. My mentor always tells me, he's like, let's not focus on how we're not hitting a goal, or let's not focus on the lack. Let's focus on how we are going to hit the goal.
right.
Right. And so like that mindset shift there is, instead of focusing on the lack, instead of focusing on how there's a gap or that we're not hitting the goal, that things aren't going right, let's shift to how we're going to make things go right. Let's shift to how we're actually going to hit the goal, because you get what you focus on. You really do. And so I say the majority of people's stresses and anxieties when it comes to money, right, are based on what I call subjectivity, right? A gray area, right? Non-factual information, not degrading people's feelings or being insensitive to them. That's not what I'm saying here. Right. But I'll give you an example of subjectivity. Like, I think I'm not going to make enough this month. I think I should pay off this credit card. I think I should be saving money here. I think I'm overspending here. I think I should have been investing already. All of that, I think, right, is the subjectivity. It's a gray area that causes unnecessary stress and anxiety, right? How you get rid of that is replace subjectivity, right? Here's exactly how much I need to make each month to bridge the gap. Here's exactly how much money I should be saving. Here's exactly how I'm going to hit my savings goal. Here's exactly what credit card I'm going to pay off first. Here's exactly when I'm going to start investing. Here's exactly when I should buy a house, right? When you replace the subjectivity with objectivity, 95% of your stresses and anxieties go away because we're focusing on the solution instead of the problem.
Absolutely. And having that plan, knowing that you have that plan, reduces that worry. And
Oh,
and
it's so
thinking
good.
more strategically, you know what your priorities are, what you're going to do about these different things because you have that plan.
Yeah, it
So
feels good. It feels good to be responsible with things, right? And when you have a
yes,
plan, it feels good. You feel empowered and you're going to make progress. I promise you that once you have the plan.
yep. So I understand you have a personal journey to share on this. Can you tell us what mindset set shift led to a significant improvement in your financial situation?
Ooh, do I have a personal journey? That's to say the least. So I'll tell you a little bit of my story here. And when I was 10 years old, my parents filed for bankruptcy for the second time, right? And because of that, they got a divorce. We lost our house, and I watched both of my cars get repoed. And the worst of it all was when my parents were moving the rental properties, they didn't allow pets, and I had to give away my 3-year-old dog at the time, who was my best friend. And so at age 10, I literally lost everything because of money. Well, at least it seemed like it was because of money. And so the crazy part, Steve, was that my parents made a lot of money at the time, right? They were very talented. They were like the cream of the crop. They were the popular kids in high school. My dad was the star quarterback. My mom qualified for the Olympics for swimming at age 13. They were both very good looking, had very good jobs, very personable. And this was like the late 90s, early 2000s, and they were making almost 150 put together at that time, right? And still lost everything, filed for bankruptcy twice. And so I remember being young Justin, 10 years old, and sitting on the couch when all of this news was getting broken to me. And it felt like literally the carpet got pulled out from underneath me. Like my life drastically changed because, you're 10 years old. They're not letting you in on these issues, right? They're hiding it from you. You don't think anything's wrong, right? And
Right.
so all of a sudden, the snap of a finger, right? Everything changed. And I made a promise to myself that said, one day when I can control it, I'll never have to worry about money ever again. I'll never let my family go through what I went through, right? And so, unfortunately, it took a little bit of time for that to kick in because when I was 18 years old, another big part of my story, I got a settlement for $80,000 from when I got hit by a car when I was 13. And
Oof.
this money was mine, Steve. Nobody could tell me what to do with this money. Like this money got put into my bank account. My parents couldn't tell me what to do, let alone I probably wouldn't want to take their advice anyways. Nobody could tell me what to do. And all I did was just mirror what I saw as a child. right? That's
Uh-huh.
all, unless you make a conscious effort to reset your subconscious set point, which is basically how you were taught how to spend money as a kid, you're just going to do the same exact thing. So I got this $80,000 when I was 18 years old. I moved 6 hours away to the state of Maryland to go to college, no supervision whatsoever over me, let alone this money. And I was a college lacrosse player, right? And to say I blew this money, Steve, would be a compliment.
Uh-huh.
It would be an absolute compliment. This money was gone in like 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And so all I did was just mirror what I saw as a child. And so it taught me many things. One, for the 2 years that I had this money, I was like, man, that freedom was nice. Like all of the stresses that I had after age 10, because after age 10, when my parents filed for bankruptcy, we struggled ever since, right? It was a constant, we couldn't afford groceries. It was a constant, I couldn't afford to go to soccer practice because my dad couldn't afford to pay the coach, right? It was a constant, struggle here, struggle there. And they never really got it together for at least for the rest of my childhood. And
Uh-huh.
so to see that I didn't have to worry about that anymore, right? Because I had that money in my bank account, right, was a huge eye opener, right? And then second, I was a smart individual and I realized, okay, there's a problem here. I blew $80,000 in 2.5 years. I should probably get it together. Right. And so a lot of lessons came with that. Right. But the biggest mindset shift is that I realized this, and I want the audience to take this away, right? Was the past is not your fault. Right. I want you to forgive yourself. Everybody listening to this, the lack of progress that you've had financially or the mistakes that you've made, it is not your fault. All you have done is just mirrored what was shown to you as a child. But at the
Uh-huh.
same time, it is damn well your responsibility to step up and take care of your future.
Right.
Right. And when I was 23 years old, I got hired at Johns Hopkins Medicine in this ridiculous job. I have no idea why they hired me. I think they were a little desperate, but they paid me a ton of money. And thankfully, I was wise enough right then and there to say, okay, if I stay on in this corporate world, which obviously didn't work out, left about 5, 6 years later, which we'll get into. But I was like, they're only going to pay me more money. I do not want to repeat what happened to me as a child and what happened to me right when I was 18 years old with that money. I want to learn how to manage money, right? So I can give me and my family the best opportunity at life. And so again, the way I want y'all to hear from this is like the past is definitely not your fault most times, but it is darn well your responsibility to step up and take care of the future. And you are at in life right now hearing this.
Mhm. Well, what you describe, a couple of great examples of the downside of the opposite from the scarcity mindset to the abundance mindset, where you see there will always be this money, and you don't have a plan on how to manage it and spend it and things like that. And despite the fact that your parents had a fairly nice household income, you had $85,000 because you didn't have that plan in place on how to manage it and everything, it went away. So that's really kind of the other end of the spectrum and a good example of that. So um, money mindset, obviously, and mastering your money can often impact more than just your financial stability. You a great example in your life of how it affects that. But what else can it impact besides that?
Your relationships. Money impacts every facet of your life, whether
Mhm.
you realize it or not, right? Because if you have fear around money, you're going to act out of that fear, right? It's going to show up in your relationships. It's going to show up in your workplace,
Mhm.
right? Give you an example. When I was younger, right, when a random $50 expense popped up, $100 expense popped up, my dad would freak out. He's fearful, and he would get scared. He was literally flipping tables when a random expense popped up, right? And so I saw that show up in my adulthood, particularly in my relationships and in my marriage. When, even after starting this company, being very financially sound and having money in the bank, right? And knowing that we're okay, my wife would come to me and be like, oh, yeah, we have that baby shower this month and we didn't budget for the gift. I'd freak out, right?
Right,
Because I'd get fearful, right? But like that money's going to run out, that like this random expense, right, is going to hurt us somehow, some way. And so that fear, that scarcity mindset showed up in my relationship, right? For a while, it's so crazy. I own this company, and in full transparency and modesty, we're probably the best financial coaching company in the entire world right now. And I was owning this company, and my wife was coming to me with these things, and I was still freaking out on her about them. Right. And so it was that fear that was showing up in my relationships. Right. I see it all the time, even with my father-in-law, who is renovating the house. Every time we talk money and some random expense pops up, I get angry with him. I'm like, it's not his fault. He didn't know there was going to be a random expense until he opened up the wall, you
Right.
know? And so I see it all the time in my relationships where that scarcity mentality, like even me with the company that I own and the work that I've done, I still have scars and wounds from childhood that show up in my everyday life, like in other situations, like my relationship, like my workplace. When we're having a low month in the business, right? You definitely feel that fear coming out on the sales team, right? You definitely feel that fear coming out,
Right.
in client conversations, right? Like, let's just say, thankfully, we're having a great month than we normally do. And I'm hopping on here. But Steve, if I was having a little bit of a lower month or having some financial, constraints right now before this call, I'd be hopping on here and you'd feel it. I wouldn't be as energetic. I wouldn't be as passionate. I wouldn't be as present. Right. So your scarcity mentality and or objective lack of money management is leaking into every other facet of your life, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. Okay, so once we have the money mindset in place and we've mastered the basics like budgeting and saving for short and long-term financial goals, basically putting our plan into place for the money, uh, what's one unconventional strategy that you recommend for achieving financial independence beyond those basics?
I love that you said the basics first, because that's what we need. We need the foundations first. Relationship with money, systems and strategies with money first. Just I call it the adulting, the boring stuff.
Right.
Right? Because if you want to build a castle, you got to lay on a strong foundation, right? But the unconventional advice that I give is I say, this is going to be based on unique variables, but I tell people instead of investing in the stock market at first, at least in large sums, invest in becoming an equity millionaire first, right? What I mean by that is, let me explain what an equity millionaire is versus what a cash millionaire is, right? And so an equity millionaire means that you may not have $1 million in cash, right? But you own assets that are worth millions of dollars, right? Like businesses, like real estate, right? And so
Mhm.
personally, that's what I am. I'm close to becoming a cash millionaire, but I became an equity millionaire first, where the businesses that I own are worth millions of dollars.
Right.
Right. So if I sold those businesses, I'd get millions of dollars in return. But I don't plan to sell them. Why I wanted to become an equity millionaire first is because if I created seven-figure businesses, that should, if I did it the right way, that means that now I should not only be making seven figures, but I should have a lot more money left over at the end of the month after expenses, or what I call profit, than my past situation. And I'll give you an example. When I worked at Johns Hopkins, I made a lot of money, right? I made six figures a year. But my wife and I, on our best months, only had $2,000 left over at the end of each month, right? Now we invest there over the years, we invested money into growing the business, right, to a seven-figure business. And it's been a seven-figure business for a couple of years now. Right now, just for easy numbers, I hope this comes off the right way. But now we've got about $50,000 left over at the end of each month, a heck of a lot more than our past situation, right? And so my point of saying that is, when you invest in the stock market, and we're not against it, right? But it's for the long haul, right? The
Right.
stock market's for the long haul. So if you want to create financial freedom for yourself, which is living life on your own terms in the fastest, most fulfilling way possible, right? The stock market's not going to provide that for you. It's going to provide the long-term stability and guarantees for you. But if you want to start living life on your own terms, become financially free next year, in 2 years, and 5 years, I would advise you to invest into becoming an equity millionaire first, right? Then after you have all of that extra money left over, now we can start dumping a bunch of money into the stock market to now create passive income for you, or multiply that increased income on the back end. And so that's usually my advice to people. If you want to be financially free, which is living life on your own terms, and I'll give you my definition of financial freedom here in a second, right?
Uh-huh.
Living life on your own terms, having freedom of choice and time and no worries of money in the fastest, most fulfilling way possible. The stock market's not going to provide that. Right? The stock market is for the long haul. I would take your leftover money, right, and maybe even borrowing money to invest in becoming an equity millionaire first, which is going to increase the amount of leftover money that you have each month compared to your old situation. And now we can start doing things like investing in the stock market with that to now diversify your income, right? Or diversify your passive income, excuse me. And so my definition of financial freedom is owning an asset or assets that make you enough money each month automatically to cover your expenses and your lifestyle, whether you choose to show up or not. And usually that asset is either real estate and or businesses, right? And so I hope that makes sense. When it comes to thinking about the unconventional advice. And the last thing I'll say is, Go all in on one thing to become rich, then diversify to stay rich.
Okay. All right. So we have everything in place and a good basis for uh, individual and personal financial freedom. Let's talk now about someone who's interested in starting a business, becoming that equity millionaire, building something as you describe here. And lots of folks have that dream of starting their own business, but they also don't want to spend their entire life working in the business to make it thrive. Owning a business, at least in the beginning, is not a 9 to 5 job. Now, what recommendations do you have for them on building a business that will support their desired lifestyle so that they're not spending all their time in the office?
Great question. So the first thing that comes to mind is what I call the bow and arrow effect, right? So you have to pull yourself back to shoot yourself forward sometimes, right? And so I love the quote that when things start to become expectations, no longer problems, right? And it's the expectation that you're working a lot, right? There's going to be a lot of hard work that goes into that, but that's why most people don't end up building a business. That's why most people don't end up becoming financially free, because of the work, the stress, the risk that goes into it, right? But
Uh-huh.
again, the bow and arrow effect, you have to pull yourself back to shoot yourself forward, right? So it's expected that at first, right, you're going to be working a lot to ramp this business up. And I tell people, when the process gets stressful, when it gets hard, right? You're not always going to love the journey, but stay in love with the outcome, right? Living life on your own terms, being able to wake up and do what you want with who you want, how you want to do it with no stress around money, right? That's a beautiful outcome, right? But don't pray for the outcome if you're not willing to put the work in for the input. And so I think when things start to become expectations, they're no longer problems. But the biggest thing I think is to go into it with limiting the stress, anxiety, and risk as much as possible. Though it's going to be hard and though it's going to be risky and stressful, doesn't mean you got to make it more risky and stressful than it needs to be. And so, what I would advise you do before you leave your day job, right, is to go all in on your business. Number one, have at least 6 months, I would say 3 to 6 months, but at least 6 months of an emergency fund built up, right? What I mean by an emergency fund is enough to cover your expenses. Most people think they got to replace their income. It's like, no, if your income's 7K and your expenses are 5K, have 3 to 5K, right? Because let's just say you have 6 months of emergency funds before you leave your day job, right? You don't need to take a single dollar for 6 months, and you know that your expenses are going to be covered. Hopefully you do make money, right? But that's worst case scenario, right? Most times people's biggest issue with being able to get the business up and running is, outside of a lack of funding or capital, is time and energy, right? They're spending all their time and energy throughout the week at their day job, right? And they have no time and energy left over to go towards building the business, right? When you leave the day job, you take the stress of the money out of it because you got 6 months of emergency funds stored away. Now you've got this beautiful two currencies freed up called time and energy that you can now double down on, triple down on, quadruple down on, to put into the business to get it ramped up and become successful. The second thing is, I would say, is to, if you can, make your monthly expenses in the business for 3 months in a row, in addition to having the emergency fund before you leave. So what I'm saying here is, let's just say your monthly expenses are 5K, right? Prove that your business can make that 5K for 3 months before you leave. So not only do you have 6 months of guaranteed expenses in the bank, you've also proven to yourself that you can make at least enough in your business to cover your expenses, right? So you have that proof of concept,
Uh,
income generation. And then lastly is open up some credit lines, right? Whether that's a HELOC, whether that's 0% APR credit cards, right? Just as last barrier of protection, if you will, right? And so let's just say, now you have proof of concept of income, you've got 6 months of emergency funds, and you've got 50K of 0% APR credit cards, worst case scenario for you to fall back on or to leverage, right? Open people's money at no cost or low cost to increase your value, your opportunities, and your wealth is one of the biggest tricks, right, to increasing your wealth. Right? When I first my business, I didn't use any of my own money. I had 18 months of reserves actually when I left Hopkins, right? And every time I needed money, if I needed it at all, right, I would just use somebody else's. right? At low cost or no cost with a 0% APR credit card, right? Or some type of lending where the interest that I was paying on it was going to be outweighed by the money that I made off of the money and the use of it. So that would be my advice for people. Like it's gonna be hard, right? When things start to become expectations, they're no longer problems, right? But at the same time, don't make it harder than it has to be by implementing these barriers or what do I want to call them? Safeguards, if you will, right? And then lastly, when to not work in the business for forever, right? You're gonna have to understand the ability to be able to scale things, meaning like hire other people to do things that they can do to free you up to do the things only you can do. Right. So I have a team of 10 right now. I'm not saying go out and hire that, right? It takes time to build up to that, right? But that's why I'm able to do podcasts like this with you. I've been, as you can hear in my voice, I've been sick for a week and haven't worked for a week, and the business has been just fine without me. Right. And so learning how to build a team and processes as you get going are going to be super helpful. So again, it can free you up to do the things in the business that only you can do.
Absolutely. And that's you made a point about scaling, which a lot of times businesses don't go out of business, they grow out of business because they don't control that expansion, that scaling. And sometimes they'll because they don't know how to do it. They can't remove themselves from the equation and build a team that can do it for you. So that can be a problem. So all right, so we've building a business and dealing with the finances of it, the risks of it, things like that. Let's approach it from the other direction. What does it look like when an entrepreneur perfectly aligns their lifestyle with their business goals as opposed to the other way around?
Question. Um, I think it's when you reach the pinnacle of life, particularly business related, where you end up working the least you've ever worked, making the most money you've ever made while making the most impact you've ever made. Right. And so um, I think that like that is so possible for people, right? And that's what financial freedom is living life on your own terms. And the only way that you end up actually showing up your business eventually one day is the only ways that you want to show up. And so for me, I love working with our clients when they get to the higher levels of our, right? When it really comes to building the business. And I love teaching. I absolutely love teaching. So there's 3 sessions I teach a week inside of our communities, right? And I wake up each morning and I don't take meetings. There's a little bit earlier than normal, but most days I don't take meetings until 12 noon, right? Eastern time. And because I spend the entire morning working on myself, spending a little bit of time with my family, and then I dive in and then I start working. And so it allows you to design the life that you want to live, right? And know that each day, each month, each year, that the amount of money that you need to cover your expenses and your lifestyle is automatically going to be there. Right. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful outcome when you get there. Will it be perfect? Absolutely not. There's business is a game, Steve, of solving problems that creates more problems. The top of one mountain is just the bottom of the next one, right? But at the
Right.
same time, though, if you do it the right way, right, and stabilize over time, do the right things with your money on the back end, right? Don't let your lifestyle creep, and take the money, save it, take the money, invest it, take the money and diversify in the back end and make yourself financially unshakable, right? Each morning when you wake up, it's just like you get to show up in your relationships and in your business the way that you want to show up.
Right. Well, it, what we're talking about here with scaling and built becoming that equity millionaire is building a business that you can then step away from. And this point was made very effectively by um, the book The 4 Hour Work Week,
Great book.
and Tim Ferriss. Couldn't think of his name. Great book, but the title's kind of enticing because you're thinking, wow, a 4 hour work week. But that's what you spend time with your family in the morning and go in the afternoon and have meetings then, but you're able to then shape your business to align it with the lifestyle you want because you built it to the point where it doesn't necessarily need you anymore. And that's the real definition of having built a business. Because if the business is you and you're in the business, you just built a job for yourself. But by building something where you have a team that can handle it, so if you're sick for a week, it keeps cranking out income and keeps functioning for you. And you're not spending all of your time in the office. You're able to spend more time with your family because you built it and scaled it to the point where you can then step away. So, one last question before he finishes. What's a key strategy that entrepreneurs overlook that can really massively improve their business operations?
Mentorship. Mentorship is a cheat code, right? I went the first year without any mentorship. And thankfully, I had really good corporate experience, right? At Johns Hopkins, I ran the hospitals from a business standpoint and reported directly to the president of the hospital. So, like, I had a good idea of how to run a business. But when I first hired my mentor about a year into my business, I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because there's people out there that have the goals that you want to accomplish, they've already accomplished it, right?
Right.
They've made the mistakes. They know the things. And so when you hire mentors that are aligned with the goals that you have, they condense timeframes, which allow you to accomplish your goals a heck of a lot faster with way less unnecessary stress and mistakes in the process. So, yes, you have to make some mistakes to learn from them, but at the same point, there's a lot of mistakes you don't have to make. Where like the people that I mentor, or let me just talk about my mentors, right? They have made the mistakes already, and they taught me how not to make them. Right. They taught me, hey, don't step on this landmine that I stepped on. And also make sure you take advantage of this opportunity that I either missed or took advantage of. So they allow you to accomplish your goals a heck of a lot faster, right? With way less unnecessary mistakes, way less erroneous spending, right? And way less stress and anxiety in the process. And so,
Mhm.
just simply put, a lot of the goals that I had, I could have accomplished on my own, maybe in 3 to 5 years, right? But I accomplished them by hiring a mentor in literally 90 days with way less stress and anxiety in the process, way less missed opportunities, less money spent, and way less money missed. And
Mhm.
so, like, it is the biggest cheat code. If you can find mentors that have accomplished what you want to do in life and business,
Mhm.
hire them, right, to tell you how to do that and help you do it. And when you find a mentor like that, their services are so much more expensive to not have than they are to have.
Oh, no question. And I've heard this saying many times, and it sort of fits with what you're saying, is that if you're going to walk through a minefield, walk behind someone. You know,
Exactly.
they've been there. They know what to avoid. They know where the landmines are. And I was listening to I of course not only have a podcast, but listen to a whole bunch of podcasts. And being an attorney, I listen to podcasts about the practice of law. And this one guest on the podcast talked about two of the biggest investments you should make. One is in coaching, and the other is in implementing what the coach teaches you. And that whole thing, right? If you don't have the coaching or the mentor, it's trial and error, and it might work and it might not. Well, if you can turn down a lot of those branches to options that won't work before you even start walking, then you're going to get to your destination a lot faster. So,
True. So good.
no question. All right. Well, a lot of great information on mindset, on building a business, on thinking about money, and anybody out there who is looking to become an equity millionaire or build their own business, make something that is theirs, that they created, that will make them, uh, give them a comfortable lifestyle. This is some advice you should follow and think about. So, appreciate having you on the show, and I hope to have you on again.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Appreciate it.
Hmm?